Hey guys, Kurt from Time Machine Transport. Just at the shop right now. Closing up, charging the murder machines, and just gotta go over here, shut this stuff off. So I've been going over some stuff in my head. Just had to pick up some stuff for one of my mother-in-law's rentals. Some stuff that I'm doing over there. Anyways, let me shut this stuff off. So let me put you on pause. I'll be right back. All right, just had to close up. So there's some stuff got down for you guys. Don't worry about my flabby rooster chin. I've lost a lot of weight, so I gotta tighten that up. I don't know how I'm making plastic surgery. Anyways, I wrote some stuff down, and I find it interesting that Israel is, their government is saying that this whole attack on Israel from Hamas, that it's their 9/11 and their Pearl Harbor. First, we should probably pray for all the people of Palestine and Israel. I have friends that are Palestinian and Jews, and they've been struggling for, 100 years probably. Anyways, I just find it very interesting that they're calling it their 9/11, their Pearl Harbor. And there's like 8 million people there in Israel. And so I understand that their numbers of the deceased, are tenfold compared to 9/11. If you believe what I believe, that 9/11 was an inside job, I think it's very interesting that the government of Israel keeps calling it their 9/11 and their Pearl Harbor. Just like our government did it to us, I believe that their government did it to the Israeli citizens. That's just my opinion. But I wrote some things down I found very interesting. Excuse me, my sugar was getting low. I had to get some candy. So I found that very interesting. I also found very interesting that Egypt has its borders closed. So I understand that Egypt supports Palestinians and Hamas. However, they didn't open their borders. We understand that Gaza is under siege right now. They don't have water, power, fuel, food. So, and rightfully so. The atrocities that they brought onto the Israeli people, or the Israelis, it doesn't justify their actions to take it out on civilians. It's the government that's been holding their thumb on the Palestinians for, so long. So, I don't side with either one. It's devastating on both sides, but especially for the Israeli people. So we should pray for all the people involved. So I find it interesting that Egypt closed their borders to the Palestinian people, and they did that intentionally. If I support my neighbor, and excuse my appearance, I'm dirty from getting stuff from my mother-in-law's place. My whole back of my truck is filled with tools. So I think it's very interesting that, if I supported my neighbor, and say, for instance, there was a flood or whatever the case is, or something devastating, right? And I wouldn't open my doors to my neighbor, for what? Why would that be? For what reason? If I'm continually telling you, and I truly do support you as a neighbor and as a friend, and then when you're in crisis, I just close my front door in your face. That makes no sense to me. And the reason I believe that they did it is because if they do support Hamas and the Palestinians, if they open their borders, Israel's gonna, if they were to do that, which they won't, Israel would say, hey, listen, if you are not, if you're not supporting Hamas, then you need to leave. We'll give you 2 weeks or 2 days to leave or a week to leave, whatever the case is, and get as far south as you can towards Egypt. And then they'll just filter you guys in when they, as they can, because I'm sure the border would be overwhelmed with human beings, right? And if that were to happen, who would be left in Gaza? Just Hamas. And Israel could just level the whole entire city and kill all of Hamas in there, right? That would make sense. It would be that easy to do that, right? But Egypt closed its borders. For what reason? Why would you do that? Because Hamas would be left in Gaza and it would be easy to kill Hamas, right? So that's why Egypt isn't opening its borders. So it's like all the civilians there are just collateral damage. That's interesting to me. Also, it's another thing that's very interesting is the Israeli government it's been all over the place how they're forming an emergency government. And this is definitely concerning because in the state that Israel has been in for all these years, you would think that they would have already had some form of that. And then, so they said they're creating a temporary government and a war cabinet. And Israel has its political mess going on as well. The Israeli people are constantly protesting. They don't like Netanyahu, the prime minister. So they have their own demons that they have to deal with. So I just find it very interesting that they're talking about they're forming an emergency government and a war cabinet. And I believe because we're not going to have a U.S. election here for the presidency. We're just not. I had called it that Trump wouldn't be reelected months and months and months before the election. My friends and family thought I was actually like the crazy guy, like, oh, you're nuts, man. How could you say that? Biden, there's no way he can beat Trump and blah, 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 blah. I just said it's not going to happen because it doesn't meet their narrative, right? Well, my brother Stevie K and I, what's up, brother? We were having cigars yesterday on the balcony after he got off work. I love you, brother. We were talking about this and I said, yeah, I'm going to do a video on it. So that's exact. And of course I'm speculating, but I think it's going to happen for the reason that they can't let Trump win, right? And I'm not I voted for Trump. I'm not a big Trumpster or whatever. I believe he's part of the political system. I truly believe that. I think he's a psyop. I think they placed him where he is for whatever reason. But anyways, there's no way he's going to win. There's no way. There's no way. So if you truly believe that the 2020 election was fixed, which I do and a lot of my friends and family do, if you believe it was fixed, right, which more than likely it was, we don't know. We're speculating. We have no proof. And we never will have the proof, just like 9/11, right? And Pearl Harbor. So, and that's why the Israeli government keeps saying it's their 9/11, their Pearl Harbor, because same thing with our government, right? So everybody who watches my videos and subscribe, then you guys know I'm a veteran, and I was in an airborne unit overseas in Vicenza, Italy, 3rd of 325, the Airborne Battalion Combat Team. And the thing is so all the stuff that's going on with Trump right now, they can't. So if you truly believe, like I do, that they rigged the election, do you think they're really going to be able to do it a second time without the public just going absolutely apeshit? Like they're going to, like we're going to make furniture move, right? So they just can't have it that way. Now you have was it RFK announced that he's running as an independent because the left has no other options. Trump is or Biden's going to run again, whatever, hiding from Biden. There's no way. Mark Twain. I tell people this all the time. Mark Twain once said, "If voting made a difference, they wouldn't let us do it." Right? I believe that my vote did make a difference, but it doesn't, as our last election proved. So with all this stuff going on with Trump, it's just he's gaining more popularity and more momentum as the election year comes up, right? So they just can't have that, right? He's too loved by the people. There's no way you're from my loins. When I get home, I'm going to slap your mama in the mouth. That's from Smokey and the Bandit. Anyways, there's absolutely no way in hell that Trump would not win this next election, just like he was supposed to win 2020, right? So they can't have it. They cannot have, they thought maybe all this stuff, with him going through trials and impeachment and I mean, just everything, right? They nothing could, if you believe that narrative, that, nothing they can do will touch this guy. And he just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So they just can't have it. They can't have it, but they also can't just let the election happen and have it to where he loses again. What do you think the population? Well, I mean, who knows what the population would do? I mean, a lot of people did nothing about the wearing the thing over your face and getting that thing put in your arm, right? People, I mean, we didn't get it. We were out there protesting for my wife's job. She's a nurse. We have friends and family that haven't gotten it, but then we also have friends and family that have gotten it. So your body, your decision, right? So, but the thing is people didn't stand up and, sit out there and out in the masses or whatever, like the yellow vests over in France. Anyways, they cannot have Trump or have an election to where Trump loses again. Maybe people would go apeshit crazy, right? Maybe not. But for the most part, I would believe that they would, right? So they can't have that. So how I see it coming is some stuff's going to go on. The war is going to happen in this country, all around the world. And that's exactly how they're going to get out of an election. It's not going to happen. They'll say, was it Eisenhower that got elected for a third term, right? Either something like that's going to happen, where they just say, hey, it's automatic, he's going to serve a third term, or two, no, we can't have elections because we're at war. It doesn't matter what's going on, right? And then that's how they'll be able to get out of an election safely without the people going apeshit crazy, right? So that also, so we will not have an election. I'm calling it now. And I've been saying this for months now, but, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope and pray to God I am wrong. I hope and pray to God I am wrong. I don't want to, who would want to be, and it's not like, oh, Kurt, pat yourself on the back. You were so right. I'm just saying, it's just, it won't happen. Because they're making all this stuff, I mean, look at the news media, right? With Israel and Hamas and then Hezbollah from Lebanon and Iran and all this other stuff, right? Well, you don't hear any of this stuff about BLM anymore. You don't hear it about the January 6th thing anymore. And speaking of BLM, this is very interesting. And of course, you don't see this on the media, right? So I was always under the assumption that, BLM had a few $100 million that was donated to them, but it's way more than that. I was shocked. They were given $99 billion with a B, $99 billion. And these companies are demanding, so there's $2.7 billion just in this math alone. And these companies are now demanding their money back from BLM. Bank of America, $18.5 million. BlackRock, $810 million. Adidas, $120 million. Amazon, $169.5 million. American Express, $50 million. Apple, $100 million. IBM, $252 million. Kellogg, $91 million. Microsoft, $244.6 million. The PGA Tour, $100 million. I mean, the PGA Tour has that much money? Holy cow. Warner Brothers Discovery, $115 million. Just that math right there is $2.7 billion. You don't hear about that, but you hear all kinds of stuff about Trump, right? And all this stuff about this war, right? And they're probably gonna not even let me upload this video, I'm sure. But anyways, so that I mean, and the list goes on. It's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I wrote down this thing because I can't look it up on my phone while I'm doing a video. Also, I have some news coming for you guys about my personal life. For truck drivers, after my court date in November. So I've had a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but I've had enough questions like, hey, what happened? There was some stuff that happened, and can't really speak of it because I have an attorney. But anyways, we'll get into that. Hopefully I can give you guys an update, God willing, at the new year, January. So, or maybe in December, hopefully. So anyways, so let's see, what was it? I had to write everything down because of my memory is not the best, I guess. So let's look at the 2 aircraft carriers that were dispatched to the Mediterranean. So I looked up some stuff and I found it pretty interesting. I don't think it's a coincidence. So the U.S. dispatched the world's largest aircraft carrier, the Dwight D. Eisenhower. And I was like, okay. So I looked up, and that is kind of their deployment area, the Mediterranean. And it is the largest, right? It is the largest. So that would make sense. But let's look at the name of the aircraft carrier, not the Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Gerald Ford, I'm sorry. The Gerald Ford is the largest aircraft carrier in the world. And I found it very, very interesting because it's not the newest one, but it is the largest one. The U.S. has a lot of aircraft carriers. So I was wondering, because I'm kind of like that guy. I want to kind of investigate thing, right? And kind of look and say, I wonder why that is. I wonder why that is. So I was like, maybe the significance is in the name. Well, if you don't know who Gerald Ford is, he's an ex-president of the United States of America. Now, I went on Google and I looked up some stuff. And let's see. So I think I should have wrote it down in a better way. I guess I was lazy. Packer hat's all dirty. All right, let's see. So actually, we're going to go over 2 of them because the U.S. dispatched the Gerald Ford, and it's there already, doing flight maneuvers and everything for this conflict with Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah. So it's already there. So I looked up Gerald D. Ford. I think it's Gerald D. Ford. I just know it's called the Gerald Ford. Now, I wrote down and Eisenhower. So, and the second one is the Dwight D. Eisenhower. Okay. And all right, let's go on to the Ford first. So President Ford presided over the worst economy in 4 decades since the Great Depression. Where are we at right now? Probably the worst economy since then, right? So let's read that again. President Ford presided over the worst economy in the 4 decades since the Great Depression, with growing inflation and a recession. With growing inflation and a recession. Interesting. He granted a presidential pardon to Nixon for his role in the Watergate scandal. In 1973, the U.S. also faced, my handwriting's horrible, sorry. The U.S. also faced challenges in the Middle East with the oil crisis and also the Arab-Israeli conflict. Interesting. In 1973, the U.S. also faced challenges in the Middle East with the oil crisis and also the Arab-Israeli conflict. In the aftermath of the Yom Kippur War. That's interesting. So, you think it's just a coincidence that they sent? I mean, I know that's like it's deployed areas, the Mediterranean, but do you think that's by accident? I don't think it's by accident. I don't think it's a coincidence either that they sent the Gerald Ford there, with that being him as a president of what I just read you. Now, the second one that's going over there is from Norfolk, Virginia. That's where it's based, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's where it's based. The Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, that's very interesting as well, because Dwight D. Eisenhower was a 5-star general during the World War II. So I looked up Dwight D. Eisenhower, and this is interesting. So you have the Gerald Ford. You just read about that, what he did as a president with that's interesting. Now Eisenhower, Larry. So here we go. Eisenhower planned and supervised 2 of the most consequential military campaigns of World War II. Operation Torch in the North Africa Campaign in 1942 to 1943, and the D-Day invasion in Normandy in 1944. Main goal in office, or his main goal in office, was to contain communism. I thought that was pretty interesting. He considered. Was that a thing? He considered using nuclear weapons to end the Korean War, and may have threatened China with nuclear attack if an armistice was not reached quickly. China did agree, and an armistice resulted, which remains in effect to this day. His new look policy of nuclear deterrence prioritized inexpensive nuclear weapons while reducing funding for expensive army divisions. He continued Harry S. Truman's policy of recognizing Taiwan as a legitimate government of China, of the Formosa Resolution by the U.S. Senate, an act. Oh my goodness, I screwed up here somewhere. Let's read that again. I'm sorry. He continued Harry S. Truman's policy of recognizing Taiwan as the legitimate government of China, and won the congressional approval of the Formosa Resolution. Formosa Resolution of 1955 was a resolution passed by the U.S. Senate, and Eisenhower signed it January 29, 1955, to counteract the threat of an invasion of Taiwan. To counteract the threat of an invasion of Taiwan by China. The resolution gave the president authorization to employ. Oh my goodness, my handwriting's awful. To employ armed forces of the United States as he deemed necessary for the specific purpose of securing and protecting Formosa and the Pescadores. Is it Pescadores or Pescadores? Which I looked up. It's you'd have to look it up. It's the 90 islands around Taiwan. It's like 148 square miles or square kilometers around Taiwan. So that's also included in there. So for the specific purpose of securing and protecting Formosa and the Pescadores against armed attack by communists. That's pretty interesting. And then it also says Eisenhower's stance on the Middle East on January 5th, 1957, within a special message to the Congress on the situation in the Middle East under the Eisenhower reign. A Middle Eastern country could request American economic assistance or aid from the U.S. military forces if it was being threatened by armed aggression. So I find that to be very interesting that they chose those two aircraft carriers to be there for Israel. I mean, the other ones I believe are the Enterprise, the George W. Bush, the Ronald Reagan, the Truman. You'd have to look at all the names of the aircraft carriers. But I just found that it was very interesting that those two aircraft carriers, and I want to say Britain might be sending a third. You notice how fast they reacted to this conflict, and it took a long time for the Ukraine thing. I find that very interesting as well. And I understand you have NATO and all this other stuff, but I just find it very interesting that how fast the U.S. and its allies, well, not its allies, but the U.S. in general. I mean, we're Israel's largest ally, I believe, because they were trying to get Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia, they're not going to do anything now in the middle of a conflict. Well, I don't know that kind of stuff, but I would assume that Saudi Arabia wouldn't put themselves out there in this, in the middle of a conflict. That would be disastrous for them, I'm sure. So anyways, I just find it very, very interesting that, and I understand, like I said, the Gerald Ford being, the largest aircraft carrier in the world, but also that's its deployment area is the Mediterranean. But I think it's more of a coincidence that they chose that one to be there with the history of Ford, right? And then also to deploy the Eisenhower with what I just told you about Dwight D. Eisenhower. I find that very interesting. So, again, it's like the governments or these higher powers just putting it right in our face, right? Like, here you go. It's so in your face that it's crazy, right? It's like, holy shit. I mean, that makes all the sense in the world, right? So we're off. And also another thing, if you look at it, we got Marines, Air Force, Army, and Navy dispatched all over the place, right? All over the place. So, eventually China's going to invade Taiwan. I mean, it's going to happen. But is this the proper time to do that? Who knows, right? But the point being is, it's very, very interesting how our military and Navy and Air Force are super spread everywhere, and yet leaving us pretty vulnerable here in the United States, right? And maybe they're not as concerned, because if the people in Israel would have had some self-defense tools, I'm talking about one of those. If they were, because I guess it's very difficult to possess those things over in Israel, and not so much here in the U.S., right? So I find it very, maybe they're just kind of, maybe they're looking for open conflict here in the United States. I personally believe that we will be invaded and we are being invaded, with everything that's happening on the borders, but also, just, they say we have sleeper cells here. You got there's this, people think just because we have two large bodies of water between us and our enemies that would prevent us from being invaded. I don't think that's security at all. I mean, obviously that's why we have a Navy, right? But our Navy's spread thin right now. Our Air Force, maybe as much, but our Marines, and I mean, you got the 101st going over to, somewhere in the Middle East right now. I mean, there's so much stuff going on. So what's going to happen here on our own soil? And again, Americans are so arrogant and ignorant that they don't think it's ever going to happen here. Well, now more and more people that I mentioned this to and I talk to, they're in agreement. They're like, you know what? It would be the best time to invade us, right? Or for a bunch of conflict to happen here, a lot of sleeper cells, whatever. I'm just saying. I mean, I know I sound like the crazy guy, right? You're crazy. I mean, we're prepared. So I just find it very interesting that it just seems like we're heading in that direction to where we're not having an election. I'm telling you. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope you guys say, Kurt, you're freaking crazy. You really lost it, blah, blah, blah. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think I am though. And I was hoping I was wrong on the Trump thing. I mean, like I said, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm not like a prophet or something, obviously. But it doesn't make sense. Just like this whole Middle East thing doesn't make sense right now. And, it's too much of a convenience or too much of a coincidence that this all breaks off now. It doesn't make sense. I mean, look at like Obama when he was really down in the polls and his acceptance rate. I mean, he was just losing so many constituents and everything for all the craziness that he did in his second term and whatever. I don't even want to get into that situation, but what happened? So they on his watch, they got Osama bin Laden and the people, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And he went from here to here a little bit, whatever the case is. Right. And then now you have all these protests, at colleges today. Today's Thursday, the 12th of October. So you have all these colleges protesting now, whatever the case is. And then tomorrow, Friday the 13th, Muslims, these de factos or whatever, or they're coming out saying, brothers in arms, and they're saying that, the world should be scared, not just the U.S., but all this stuff's going to kick off. Who knows what's going to happen, right? I just find it very interesting that we're coming up on an election year and all this stuff going on with Trump and all this stuff going on with Biden and just so on and so on. And then you got Netanyahu over in Israel. He was brought up on corrupt charges, or he was being charged with corruption and all this stuff. It's very, very interesting, like I said, how this is all playing out. And again, why not Egypt opening its borders? It could be as simple as that. Opening up the floodgates for the Palestinian people to get out. Because, come on, let's be honest here. I mean, just like people are divided, right? People are divided for race, for religious reasons, for ethnic reasons, whatever the case is, right? It's just part of human nature, unfortunately. It's disgusting. However, especially over in the Middle East and stuff like that, you have the Sunnis, you have the Shiites, you have the Muslims, you have the Arabs, you have the Jews, you got all this stuff, or the Arabs, whatever you want to say. So my point is, there's just so much going on, right? And I'm not just sticking up for the Palestinian people or the Jewish people or the whites or the Hispanic. You know what I'm saying? I'm a loving person, man. I love, all my brothers and sisters and so on and so on. So I just find it very odd that Egypt's not opening up its borders. It could be as simple as that. If you're talking about killing innocents, why not do that? But no, it's completely the opposite. So just ask yourself some questions like, why are they just pouncing on this so fast? I mean, they were there like that. They were there like that. It's a pretty good snap. Yeah. So anyways, I'm done babbling. I got to get out of here and get home. And I was talking to my neighbors over here. They were talking my head off, but anyways, it's part of our shop. And anyways, just think about it, man. Leave a comment in the comment section. I don't care if you beat me up on it and say, Kurt, you're crazy. There's no way, you don't know what you're talking about, whatever the case is. And also, don't just take what I'm saying. Look this stuff up and read it, man. And don't just listen to the mainstream media and take everything that they regurgitate and believe that is fact, right? Anyways, just a thought. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Ciao.